Naruto exclusive videos lemon come out on my boosty. You can watch and subscribe. Link in the description. Enjoy watching. Description: the master of magic, who invented the ability to become immortal before time, having studied a huge number of magical practices, dies due to the intrigues of other magicians and the government of his country, before doing everything to leave them with nothing and awaken his memory and personality in the next life. Prologue. Death. It was she who overtook me when the magicians, hungry for my knowledge, finally fulfilled their intrigue, cherished for many years. I was blackened before the Emperor, portrayed as a true monster who studies chaos, demonology, black magic, and the like. And they also provided, true, evidence of my crimes that I never committed. My research was in a completely different direction and key: immortality. The eighth shell of the essence of a rational being, which elves have, allowing them to live as long as they want in years. This, of course, does not concern violent death and the like, but it was the first step, and I passed it. Perhaps that is why the Emperor accepted the evidence as true. He, too, like many other mortals, desired immortality. Emperor Vizal was an extremely greedy man. But this did not stop him from throwing lavish feasts and making his life full of luxury, while ordinary people on the streets of his city worked as hard as they could to pay exorbitant taxes. But I never cared about him. Any magician could make money almost out of thin air, because he possessed magic, which is capable of a lot. For example, I sold magically grown food products for pennies, but given my capabilities and the amount sold, these pennies became full-fledged gold coins. The poor from all over the city waited for my shop to open from early morning to buy cheap and high-quality products. Simply passing under the heading "magical experiment." Wealthy citizens turned up their noses at such goods, and therefore only the poor were my clients. But even despite this, many merchants grumbled, although they could not do anything, since the master of magic for them is like a dragon for a peasant. An extremely dangerous and powerful creature that will kill and not notice. With my shop I helped the poor eat well on the pennies they earned, and that's why the street where I lived was the safest in the city. The bandits themselves, who joined these ranks because they couldn't earn a decent living, protected my street from any attacks. And my title as a magician, of course. The goods in the store, which opened at 8 in the morning, invariably ran out by lunchtime. There was nothing left on the shelves at all, they bought everything. At the same time, the bandits monitored the order and the queue. Surprisingly, they did not oppress anyone, but sold tickets for pennies to the queue, which were occupied earlier than everyone else. For the smallest copper coin, you could buy a ticket to my store during its opening and get a huge selection, and not what was left. Since the bandits were not impudent, and there was simply no smaller coin, I did not touch them. They monitored the order excellently. The guards don't even go onto this street, as it's always calm and quiet here. The stranger who came in was immediately given a warning. And if he didn't understand it, his remains were carried out of town. The poor also wanted to live well. And the taste and quality of my products were no different from those in the merchants' shops. And the people who ate my goods even became healthier. Probably because everything I have is fresh, unlike unscrupulous traders. The poor began to live more tolerably thanks to my shop, which gave out a huge amount of goods every day, which appeared in it as if by magic. Although why how? Magically and appeared. The entire basement of this shop was turned into an artifact that collected magical energy around and created these very products. Bread, spices, clothes, bed linen, candies, pies, cakes, and much more. And I can really create a lot, since my store of knowledge is very large. I even once summoned spirits from other worlds and bought knowledge from them. Quite a common practice among magicians, since in this way one could acquire truly valuable knowledge. Only more often than not you come across dross, as many people think. I disagree with them, as do the 34 awards of the Magical Assembly on the shelf above my fireplace. It is thanks to even the insignificant knowledge bought from the spirits that I was able to invent and make many new things. For example, cheap to produce and self-sufficient home heaters, which are made with special paint on the walls and roof of houses. They absorb sunlight and provide warmth in the house in winter or a pleasant coolness in summer. And this is only the simplest of my inventions. I conducted tests in special houses that I'd built with the help of magic on my land and equipped with everything necessary. And everything worked from my experiments in adapting knowledge to a magical analog. Almost everyone turned up their noses, because I was renting out these nice houses for pennies. But there were also demands. Needless to say, the poor respect me? I am the only person with the title of aristocrat who can safely wander the darkest alleys of the slums. And no one will touch me or start a fight or attack me. On the contrary, the order on those streets that day will be incredible. And the residents will put on the best they have. They will even try to wash themselves and sprinkle their paths between the houses. The inhabitants of my experimental houses are always warm and comfortable, have water in the house, a magic oven for cooking food, and even the food itself, bought in my store. When I improved the lives of these people so much, the old boss of the bandits in the slums was gone, because he wanted to rake it all in. His short-sighted act was not appreciated by his own henchmen, whose family members now lived, as they themselves say, much better and more dignified. My houses were looked after, the surrounding area was always clean and well kept. These multi-story buildings were in the very center of the slums. The locals called them the abode of light, because it was always lighted by magical lamps. And it was safe, because the families and loved ones of the same bandits lived there, who did not allow lawlessness there and brought order with a firm hand. For this I was regularly paid a small rent. A very small one. You could even say symbolic. I placed a lot of knowledge from other worlds in special crystals, which were stored in an artifact chest, on the side of which was written, Pentium X Computer. I always smile when I see this magical artifact of information storage. But only I, because I know what it means. Thanks to my research, I managed to find the connection contours of the eighth shell of the essence, which grants liberation from old age. And in this, information from other worlds also helped me. Namely, medicine. Stem cells. I then opened a hospital where I accepted patients for the same symbolic fee as always. But this only applied to the poor. The scanning seal at the entrance forced everyone else to either turn around or pay according to their means. Otherwise, there were a lot of parasites. By researching the people I treated, I was able to study these very stem cells and their quantity in the human body. And with their help I found the very energy and body points, the influence on which will allow one to live much longer than usual. And once an elf I met and healed was manna from heaven. He even declared a debt to me on his behalf, to which I asked him to bring me several elves, some very young and some older, having sworn an oath on magic that I would not do anything bad to them. Elves are immortal and therefore unhurried. They do everything carefully, and therefore take a long time. But do they care when they can live for thousands of years? The elf fulfilled his part of the agreement, bringing several elves to me 2 years later. I then, having learned about the challenge and the readiness of this project, almost forgot to put on my pants, I was so in a hurry to discover. Having studied the energy of the elves, who were surprised that nothing bad had really been done to them, I let them go after a week. I saw them off with a smile of idiot happiness, since I had finally found a solution to the issue of getting rid of aging. At that time I was already almost 200 years old, so the gray-haired old man, who had not yet learned and experienced so much, with a bad back and a bunch of incurable diseases, 6 months after his experiment, was jumping like a goat, and stopped complaining about arthritis and the like. Completely. I even shook the red light district to the depths, having bought a ticket to 2 beauties who agreed to it for a lot of money. And they did not regret it, as they later confessed with wide eyes to their curious girlfriends. After all, under the clothes of a seemingly elderly man there was a muscular and strong body of a warrior, and not a 200-year-old decrepit old man. By the way, this was my mistake, after which intrigues began to be woven around my person, since many interested parties learned from the same girls that I was too well preserved for my age. Right now my house is being stormed by the Emperor's Guard, but it's not that easy even for the magicians present with them, since many of the energy constructs from the defense are completely incomprehensible to them. I drank the experimental swill, which made me exhale hoarsely and gnaw the leg of the enchanted chair with tears in my eyes, since water, food, ice, and everything else did not save me from the simply unbearable taste of this. By the way, it is precisely the improvement of taste that I still need to work on. And so, the memory potion is activated after the death of my body, attaching the grain of my memory and personality to the soul tightly, and with a huge number of defenses. I also threw my Pentium X into the interworld, attaching several beacons to it so that I can find it if necessary and unpack the memory. I burned down the library with all my diary and scientific journal entries, laughing madly, imagining how sour the schemers' faces would be. He he he. Serves them right, the lazy ones. Ugh. Having scattered the ashes from the diaries into the portal between worlds, I drank that bad potion. I ended up gnawing on the leg of a chair because of the unbearable taste, and then I took out the most expensive wine I had hidden for this occasion, poured it into a glass, and took out the moonshine because I wanted to leave beautifully, with wine in my hand, and the would-be attackers hadn't even managed to get past the first level of defense. And there were only 50 of them. Well, I have absorbed knowledge about multitasking and program modules very well. I had to wait a week until the evil and crumbling archmage of the king came and attacked my house with his cunningly twisted battle spells. My defense by that time could have held off another 100 such attacks. It seems I went overboard with duplicating all the systems. All of them, 1,000 times. That is why it was necessary to turn off the house's protection just after the danger to the building had passed. I think the Archmage would forgive a real slap in the face more easily than such a slap in the face to his skill. Although, of course, he wouldn't forgive. Proud. When the attackers burst into my office, they saw an old man drinking expensive and extremely rare elven wine, who, before catching a bunch of enchanted crossbow bolts inside his body, showed them the international gesture of one of the worlds. The middle finger on the right hand free from the glass. I had no protection, so the bolts riddled me like a colander, but didn't wipe the smile off my face. And my leg under the table was already holding me at an angle backwards. So the strong blows of the bolts helped my body fall into an open interworld portal with no destination address, leaving the freaks even without my body. Otherwise, the necrophiles will start practicing necromancy. After the portal instantly closed behind me, the entire house was cleared of any dirt and traces of my body. And then it also burst into flames, burning down in a matter of seconds. And it didn't even burn down the house next to it, which is surprising. But not for me. I am a man with a conscience. True, one that sleeps deeply and securely. The Archmage and the mages survived, protected by magical shields, which cannot be said about a bunch of warriors from the Emperor's personal guard. And my soul went to be reborn, together with a magical structure attached to it, which in the next rebirth will awaken my memory in a new body. And so died the modest by many standards master of magic Archibald, who studied 3 centuries ago with the powerful Archmage, whom he himself sent to his forefathers. But no one knows about the latter. And you quietly okay? Hee hee. Part 1. Rebirth and the Humble Master. You know, waking up one fine morning, instead of shouting from the window to the whole neighborhood that he would become Hokage, one notorious blonde fell out of bed with orange horror on his body and croaked the following: "How my head is splitting!" And getting up from the floor, intuitively went to the bathroom, where, pulling the hood off his head, he stuck his head under a stream of cold water. Okay. After a while, the pain in my head went away a little, and the boy whispered something, and then was illuminated for a moment by a barely visible golden light of the spell. And so it's really cool. With relief, I slid down the wall, catching the euphoria from the work of hormones and stimulants in my body, which abundantly threw blood into my adrenal glands and dear brain. After sitting on the floor for a while and feeling how cold it was, he put his hat on his cool, wet head and stood up, examining his new face, swollen from sleep. Blue eyes, 2 of them, check. Blonde fumes on the head, but under the pajama cap, check. Pigmented mustache on the cheeks, check. Simple orange pajamas, check. By the way, the cap is cool, you can tell right away that I chose it. black, with cool eyes, a black ball nose, and 2 white square teeth above the forehead. Rubbing his face with his hands, he placed a small bench under his feet and climbed onto it so that he could hang over the sink and wash his face. After washing, he lifted his face, which was dripping with water, and looked in the mirror again. I'm about 6 years old, no more. Underdeveloped, as evidenced by my height, at which I need to stand on something to get to the sink normally. I look healthy, but a light body skin showed that there are internal scars of the skin epidermis and muscles, and bone growths that form only after multiple injuries, cracks and fractures. Strange for a boy's age. Having looked closely into the mirror, I began to remember something. Just a little more, now the Sharingan will cut through, just a little more, the air has spoiled, but it doesn't matter, I live alone, come on. Give birth, leaky memory. Horrible thought. Come here. Okay, there is another way. I sighed at the reflection in the dirty mirror, which had been bulging its eyes a second ago, and began to shovel through the memory of this body, finally finding the answer. Oh, come on! That same kid I taught a couple of stances? Naruto Uzumaki? I grabbed my hair. Why did I have to be reborn here? Karma, or something? Like I was here before? Go to that world after death, and into the body of the most offended boy. To a world where broken energy constructs in the form of huge chakra beasts with a bunch of tails live. Having looked closely at his reflection, he suddenly cooled down. Come on, why am I so mad? So what, a world known for something. It's even better this way. And in my computer chest there should be a crystal with the memory bought from the anime spirit somewhere. Who's going to stop me from getting settled here too? As a last resort, I'll get out of the village and search and whistle. Whether Shinobi or Akatsuki. I'll change my appearance, age, and no one will know. I stroked my belly and lifted my pajama shirt, seeing the emerging pattern of a seal in which an interesting lodger lives. I'll have to take a look at it. Is it the same as on my last trip, or is it different? But I had to leave this study for later, because first I remembered my apartment. Not so bad, actually. Old, yes, but sunny, with a beautiful view, a flower by the window, a brown floor, and slightly old, but high-quality furniture. For centuries. I said thoughtfully, examining the bed from underneath. Powerful and made of solid wood. Yes, even a man-at-arms in full armor and his horse could jump on it, they wouldn't break it. The bed. I won't say anything about the floor, the paint is old, the boards creak. But who knows what's underneath? I learned from memory that the water in the house was only cold, but that's not scary. Am I a magician or did I go out for a walk? NBU on the opposite roof under disguise? Don't make me laugh, big deal, a kid messing around with a faucet, young, curious, stupid. Yes, that's how I will be for those around me. How do I always do it in the morning? Good morning, Konoha. I promise that I will become the strongest Hokage. Came from my window, people in the area wished me all the best in quotes, but somehow without fire. They got used to it, I guess. And then my memory told me that, actually, my stomach was growling and I needed to eat. Growing organism, Databeo. Running into the kitchen nook, I turned on the gas on the stove and poured water into the kettle, putting it on the fire. I opened the refrigerator and found nothing there except an expired package of milk and a bunch of packs of local freeze-dried noodles. Why the hell do I keep it in the refrigerator? I was amazed, but my growling stomach said its weighty word, so I snatched the pack, closed the refrigerator, and began preparing the noodles for pouring boiling water. Having opened it and poured in the spices, I assessed the quality. Quite good in appearance, by the way. And I realized that I was still in my pajamas. While the kettle was boiling, I managed to change into my signature jumpsuit with rolled-up sleeves and trousers, under which I wore a white t-shirt and shorts, and on my head, instead of a Hittite, I had the canned glasses the old man had given me, which held my hair up and kept my bangs from getting in my eyes, which was simply excellent, in fact. I poured boiling water into the noodles and went to brush my teeth, then returned to the room. A bed, a nightstand with an alarm clock on it, a flower on a patch of ground by the window. Opening the window, He took out the container for rainwater and poured it into bottles, which he hid in a box stored under the bed. From there he took an open bottle and watered the flower. He left the window slightly open to air the room and, grabbing a dirty trouser leg from the floor, ran to collect all the trash, which he packed into a black plastic bag, and with a clear conscience went to eat, on the way wrapping himself in the bathroom and washing his hands again. He had just been collecting trash. I gobbled up the noodles, which turned out to be very tasty and filling, looking with interest at the brochure on the wall, which said that sublimation products were delivered by a shinobi courier. By the way, from the pictures and the awakened memory, I realized that this is exactly how I order my noodles and milk, but the latter either quickly disappears or is delivered to the door already lost. Not right. When I finished the simple food, I cleared the table and threw the cup into the bag, tied it up, and then returned to the refrigerator. A couple of unnoticeable manipulations and magical figures drawn on the walls with saliva, and voila! By evening there will be more noodles in it, that's one. It will always be equally fresh, despite the expiration date, that's two. And also the milk, which 10 minutes earlier was sour, is fresh and tasty again. And it will always be here. I also put seals with formulas for the materialization of cereals, eggs, sausage, bacon, fruits. But there are minimal delicacies. But every day in the morning there will be something to cook, and from what? And it is unrealistic to notice the formulas at first or second glance. Only the Sharingan will help. Well, and probably the Byakugan, but they're not exactly. By the way, bottled water is an emergency reserve for the ficus, and for those days when the water in this old house is cut off, which happens quite unexpectedly and always at the wrong time. So I also put materialization seals on the bottles, but this time for water. Let it be. Otherwise, water pouring from the tap when it is turned off in the house is too noticeable. Otherwise, stock up on rainwater and go to hell. It will be warmer for her to wash herself with, too. With room temperature water. There was a poster with the village sign on the walls, as well as free posters from the box of noodles supplied. A bonus for those who bought a box. And I always buy a box, since Shinobi delivery does not work with smaller orders. And his own shopping trip causes an involuntary tremor in the knees and a lump of negativity in the heart. However, he is not greeted well on the street. Sitting on the bed, I began to sift through the memory that I had before the seed of my personality was revealed in my soul. Yeah, hyperreactivity. Well, that's normal for a boy my age. Eternal positivity, it's strange, but as I understand it, the defensive reaction comes from the desire to appear more friendly. Tin throat. Well, I've always loved to scream at will. So it clearly comes from the soul. Birthday. Sadness and pain awaken in the body. Wow, they've really tortured me. But it will come back to haunt them, if I'm not myself. Mischief is in my repertoire. So it's not surprising. Ha! It's like I'm looking at myself as a child. In that world, somehow, things didn't work out with my family. But it's my own fault, I'm too keen on science. By the time I learned this and that, I was already 150, and there was no time for exploits on the love front. Only visiting the red light district, when I couldn't stand it. And that's all, I guess. I had such a magical reserve and power back then that I had to hang seals on myself like toys on a Christmas tree, so as not to raise questions about why I'm not an archmage yet. Well, screw it, they hang so many demands there. And other archmages make life difficult. In this sense, being a master is easier. Although it doesn't work to attract the attention of sufficiently strong mages. And female masters won't tolerate pregnancy from me. Alas and ah. And the existing chakra added problems in this regard. I still haven't found a solution to this. But I won't miss out on my own in this world, and I'll find myself a girl. The main thing is to figure out the attitude of those around me, otherwise with such an attitude they'll kill my wife, and after that I'll turn not only this village, but also a decent chunk of the land of fire into a crater. But you won't be able to become strong quickly. Maybe run away? When did I ever run away from difficulties? So it's nothing to them. Let them endure, since they created such a life around me. Nodding to myself, I wondered what to do. And as it turned out, I don't go to the academy yet, only to the swings near it, but there the sadness and melancholy comes from loneliness and the status of an orphan. And so, well, screw it. Having fallen onto the bed, having taken off my glasses before, I fell into meditation, which from the outside would look like sleep due to the slowing down of the body's metabolism and calm breathing, and began to examine my energy structure. And yes, I have a lot of yin. It would have suppressed yang if it weren't for the fox chakra and the red-haired genes. Uzumaki. And so in the ocean of yin you can notice a very small pond with yang. It's bad because the body can't develop normally. And therefore, I'll have to put filters and isolate yin. Or milk the fox more actively, but he'll wake up from that. Although, what do I care about this sloth? But his chakra will also manifest itself in a change in my appearance. Pigmented whiskers are already a problem, and fangs and eyes that would be a total disaster. So, the filter. Having dug into calculations and building the necessary structure in the energy body, I was able to implement the dam for yin only after 3 hours. But I felt how the body let go and the metabolism began to return to normal. Even too much. My butt began to itch to create something. After digging through my new memories, I found a good option. Strength exercises. They will tire you out enough and will benefit your body. Having woken up, I made some more noodles and ate them with milk, and then headed out. While putting on the shinobi sandals, I drew a protective sign with my saliva, which would let me know if someone showed up in the apartment. I'm gone! The body barked out of habit. Well, I'm not as withdrawn as I used to be. Well, it's okay, it's even funny. I'll imagine that I said goodbye to the ficus tree by the window, or the fridge with noodles. The training place turned out to be nearby on a vacant lot for development. It is surrounded by a fence, so few people will notice me here. And it is located away from the streets, which means people rarely wander here. With the general attitude towards my new carcass, it is better not to stand out in the crowd. Although, grinning, I dashed off to run around the site, jumping over piles of construction materials and trash. The main thing is not to use chakra, although if it's just a little and not on purpose. 20-5. I exhaled, falling into the dust of the wasteland, since this body is not able to do any more push-ups. Although it's not particularly strange, my diet is frankly not very good. I'm almost 7, but I look 5. The lack of vitamins and building material is immediately visible. Although the problems are leveled by chakra, it can't plug all the holes. Having finished training, I stood up on trembling legs and slowly went to my apartment. I needed to wash myself, do laundry, eat, and fall asleep. I saw books and scrolls in the boxes there. Not just anything, but you can get information from this too, if you know how. And I can. I managed to get to the apartment successfully, as well as wash myself in a basin, which seemed like a bathtub to me because of my build and size. Then I washed my overalls and underwear and, having pulled a rope by the window, hung my clothes out to dry. Soon it will be April, which means that any day now the old man will call me to him and tell me about entering the academy. Actually, it doesn't matter to me, but let's not stand out. On the contrary, I will be the laziest and most unremarkable, getting by only on stubbornness and minimal passing scores. That sounds cool, because with my knowledge I'll have to try hard not to get the highest score all the time. Yes. I'll do that. I raised my hand up and laughing, fell into bed. But the laughter quickly died down, since there was no joy inside. But overcoming myself, I went to the kitchen and had a snack of noodles with vegetables and finely chopped bacon, which appeared in the refrigerator. It's time to eat better, otherwise I'll remain a dwarf. Well, screw it, I need to be beautiful to find myself the most wonderful girl and wife. Yes. The morning paints with a gentle light, I drawled sadly, opening my eyes in the morning. Still the same ficus, still the same windows. Okay, stop, this memory from my body fell into place. Although yes, this very memory, fit in during sleep just great, and now I do not have that feeling that everything here is new. But, good morning! Jumping out of bed and opening the window, I yelled to the whole neighborhood. I will become Hokage. Shut up, little one. The village responded kindly. It was like balm for the soul. You did something nasty, your heart is happy. Having quickly done my business in the toilet, I poured water from a bottle into the kettle, since there was no water in the bathroom yet, and put it on the gas stove. By the way, there were never any problems with gas, as far as I remember. At least some joy. Having pulled out a carton of milk, new noodles, of which there was more in the refrigerator since yesterday, they were finally synthesized. I cut green onions, lettuce, sweet peppers, bacon, sausage into noodles, and broke an egg on top. When the kettle started whistling with its spout, I poured boiling water into the noodles and closed the lid to steep, brewed a mug of aromatic synthesized tea from dried berries and herbs, enjoying its pleasant smell, made a simple sandwich and, taking the chopsticks in my hands, began to meditate over the noodles. Be patient, Naruto. Let the egg cook better. I persuaded myself, sniffing, drooling from the delicious aromas that the guy did not often manage to catch on his table. Now I will feed my body better, but still. Just a little more. Having waited with difficulty for the required 3 minutes and a minute on top, I tore off the lid and, taking the bread in my hands, began to eat, deftly and quickly wielding chopsticks. The body is accustomed to them, although I will need to find cutlery. It is possible to create them, but the metal will not last long. I am better with food. And it is not bad in principle. Having finished eating, I heard a knock on the door, opening which I saw a shinobi in a standard ANBU uniform and a mask with a monkey pattern. Although a person not accustomed to this culture would never guess that it was this particular beast. Uzumaki Naruto, the Hokage calls you to him. Hi, ANBU-san. I'll get dressed and go now. I answered him, looking at him with curiosity. Yeah, with my body it seems like he's some kind of giant, although in reality he's not. I was ordered to accompany him. He answered. Having entered the room, he got dressed and in a couple of minutes he was already rushing on the back of a shinobi, who was moving along the roofs at a decent speed. He was running about 60 kilometers. And it was noticeable that this was not the limit. A notch in my memory, the run is the same as in the world I visited in my youth. While he was delivering me to the residence, I managed to remember many shinobi skills that I will have to adapt to this body unnoticeably. And even then, after we are given lessons like, "Feel the power, Luke!" Or is that from another opera? I should have been less fixated on the memory of spirits. But there was so much interesting stuff there. And their science fiction films? Just look at how many ideas I got from them. For fun, I created a prototype of the T-800 based on a magical principle of operation, and it even moved. True, it was as dumb as, well, steel, that's what steel is. What did I want from it without attaching a couple of self-aware spirits to its thinking system? But I did create it, and even attached spirits and an analog of a computer system, and covered it with pseudo-flesh, creating the appearance of the very actor who played this machine. And then I got carried away by something else, putting the toy in a reduced form in the storage cells on the Pentium chest. There are many such miniature cells with red and white spheres. Yes, I also looked at Pikachu. So I have a whole set of peculiar Pokemon from the Bad Master. Part 2. My ANBU horse ran to the residence quite quickly, because it wasn't that long to run. And I managed to remember so much. In short, the acceleration of consciousness for a mage is a good thing, but the main thing is not to abuse it, otherwise when you look up and see the world slowed down many times, you don't always understand the situation correctly. I was beginning to think that one of the local gods had decided to screw me over. I even turned a little pale, but noticed the change in consciousness in time and cancelled its acceleration, so that the world returned to the normal flow of time. And a few seconds later, ANBU dropped me off at the threshold of the residence, and left so quickly that only leaves remained in the air, floating smoothly in the wind. But this is poetry. Entering the building, I walked through the noisy corridors of the local administration, along which shinobi, clerks, bureaucrats, battleships with wide bellies of bosses were running. And finally, I found myself on the 5th floor, where I waved to the secretary, who only sighed at the sight of me and, out of habit, kicked the door open. Hello, old man. An old man was waiting for me inside, who is the local lord of the village here. And yes, impudence is the second happiness, and I always got away with such approaches and greetings. Are you ruining your health again? Achoo! Naruto. The old wreck of a politician smiled, on whom there is no place to put samples, and therefore causing mistrust by his very existence. And he sighed imperceptibly, putting his pipe away in the table. An excellent place to store a tobacco pipe. Surely everything in that department was completely saturated with this smell. The new owner will have to throw this table out the window, or smash it to pieces to replace the stinking thing. Otherwise, it's of historical value and all that. Ugh, damn it. Yes, old man? Looking into his eyes, where a running line read the inscription that he would throw ramen on his ears in no time. But that was only in my imagination. In 3 days, the Shinobi Academy opens its doors to new students. Hooray! I will become a shinobi, Databeo. I immediately stunned the old man, who winced from the deafening sound from my tin throat. Yes, I enrolled you in it. The old schemer smiled, seemingly even naturally. Hooray! I'm one step closer to your chair, old man, I said, accompanying this cry with a raised fist and a happy face. And to myself I added that to hell with it, this old man's chair. Politics and me? It's not even funny. We don't get along in principle. Classes will start on April 1st, Naruto, and I hope that you will attend all the classes and try hard in your studies. After all, to become Hokage, you need to know and be able to do a lot. Of course, old man. I will study hard. He nodded like a dummy, simultaneously crossing his fingers behind his back. Keep away from me, keep away from me. Here is the application form, give it to your assigned sensei. The bastard smiled, and was probably already intending to let me go home, but no, he couldn't get away with it. Taking the form, I scratched the back of my head, literally screaming with all my facial expressions that I was puzzled beyond measure. Naruto, is something wrong? Hiruzen turned to me, having taken the bait. Yeah. I raised my eyes to the ruler, which were full of superstitious horror and panic. What's wrong with you? The old man who was next to me immediately jumped up from his place. How the bastard plays, how he plays. Old man, I said in a dead voice. And you need a lot of things for school, right? Well, not much to start with, but notebooks, pens, pencils, and then uniforms for training will be needed. The discouraged Kage agreed. And my tears started flowing and my lips started trembling, which even confused the old man. He didn't understand what was happening. After a dramatic pause, I finally gave birth, and what will I buy it with? There was so much torment and hopelessness in my phrase that the old man even recoiled. And my legs gave way. I sat right on the floor and began to stare ahead with a fixed gaze. Damn, if it weren't for this old man's power, I would have just used mental magic and influenced him. But he doesn't know how he will react if he feels interference? I don't care, but losing a good place to live with access to knowledge unknown to me? I'll be damned if I don't get the most out of this situation. The Kage looked with wide eyes at the child, literally emotionally broken, with an empty look shedding tears. Even his old schemer's heart began to ache. After all, Naruto was not just anyone and not an enemy, but Minato's son. Now the child was literally broken. And the Hokage understood why. After all, Naruto so dreamed of becoming useful to the village, of being recognized by the residents, and even of becoming Hokage to protect it. And now the child's sincere dream was faced with reality, namely, that he had no money for his studies. The Hokage remembered how he personally wrote out a good stipend for him, ordered that he be provided with housing and that the child be helped with food. However, everything went completely differently than he had wished. The villagers somehow found out that Naruto was a Jinchuriki and began to poison him. Oh, how the moment he found out about it, he threw and tore. He even hit Danzo in the eye and almost nailed his advisors to the biju. After all, now every dog in the village knew who exactly was the bearer of the biju. And this is a strategic and state secret. which is known to anyone who asks the villagers who is the fox. And they will all point to the boy. And then it will be easy to find out whether it is true or a distraction. Danzo swore and swore that he was not guilty. After all, he was not an idiot to expose the village like that. Looking at him rising from the floor, Hiruzen believed. And so Mitokado and Hamura shuddered when the Kage turned his unkind gaze on them. He shook the advisors like a fruit tree, but there was no evidence of their betrayal. Just as there was no information from almost the entire ANBU staff that was sent around the village to find out who had started this rumor. And this was what was most stressful. Especially since Danzo was offended by the bruise under his eye. He's completely softened up. In his youth, he'd received worse wounds, as his bandages and scars show, and he's offended by the bruise that the Irionans removed in a couple of seconds. They were never able to find out the leak, which infuriated the Kage beyond belief. The ANBU captains, all together, spent a month cleaning out the stinkiest cages of the Inuzuka clan by hand and with chakra suppression seals on their bodies. The bureaucratic and analytical structures were feverish and shaking from the Kage's anger. And Danzo showed up anyway, and Hiruzen, after his proposal, almost gave him another black eye. This half-baked counterintelligence agent suggested changing the Biju's vessel, knowing that Naruto wouldn't survive that. And Hiruzen had already done something wrong to Minato's son, to do that too. And now this guy, whom the old politician, alas and no matter how abstracted, began to consider almost a grandson, is crying because of the lack of funds for training. Cat. Kage hissed, and an ANBU in a cat mask immediately appeared in front of him. Bring Naruto's payment papers. Papers for his food deliveries. Lists of products and receipts from the warehouse. All reports from his cover ANBU. Now. The Hokage looked at the broken child and realized that he had again failed to notice, had not looked closely enough. Old age, all that damn thing. The mind is not so sharp, the body is not so healthy and agile. And it is impossible to keep track of everything. And this is what happens in the end. And all the seemingly smart managers, in the end, did not live up to expectations, like the same Orochimaru. Or Jiraiya, who cannot be lured to work by anything. The Kage promised himself that if he found even one mistake or inconsistency in the reports about Naruto, then the culprits would go to Ibiki. Honestly, when I felt the reaction to my performance, which began so that the Hokage could get rid of an annoying tool by giving him a lollipop as a small help from the state, I almost lost my game. The old man wasn't just angry, some kind of demonic horror actually began to emanate from him. He called the NBU like a dragon's jaws snapping. And then he made him dig through everything and get all the reports on me. About the stipend, expenses, supplies. What supplies? I don't know anything about them. A stipend? Are you kidding me? It's barely enough for food. And even that's just the most basic. Yes, I could save a lot, if they sold me normal products, databao. They didn't raise the prices tenfold. And they didn't sell the most illiquid goods. I'm so angry. But wait, you'll still experience my revenge. The Hokage asked me to wait in the reception area. And then they started bringing him huge stacks of papers. I detached myself from the bustle and began to watch the Hokage's office not with my eyes, but with my energy and spirituality. And I saw how the Kage himself and his shadow clones took all these papers and read them with great speed, compared them. After the first shot, Kage left the office angry as a herd of rhinoceroses. Cat. Hi. Take the boy home. Give him 5,000 ryo and 100 food coupons to Ichiraku right away. And tomorrow, deliver food from the 4th warehouse according to the order, and bring everything else that must be given to this boy according to MY order. Carry out. I didn't even have time to squeak before I found myself on the ANBU's back, and we were already jumping out the window. The speed took my breath away and my head started spinning when, before he even reached the ground, my carrier used Shunshin. I found myself at home literally 10 seconds after the order was given by the Hokage. There was also a stack of money and coupons on the table near the bed, and there was no trace of the shinobi. From the unexpected turn of events and the fact that, it turns out, I was wrong about the old man, I fell onto the bed and thought. After all, I still need to do harm to those who oppress me, believing rumors and their blind feelings. Although, and why not? Standing up and flexing my fingers, I said into the air of my room. After all, those who have lost their loved ones hate me, right? There was no smile on my face when I entered the toilet, but a grin. Part 3. Night of the Called departed. When I entered the bathroom, I climbed into the shower and turned on the water, pretending to wash myself. And then I turned to Mayim, letting a huge flow of energy pass through my energy shells. In reality, the air around my frail, sinewy body trembled, instantly raising the surrounding temperature, making the cold water feel pleasantly cool rather than icy. In my right hand the structure of the sphere of Ignis materialized, with the help of which I sent a signal into the interworld. And my chest responded, in order to open a portal into its insides near me in a few moments, and expose part of the staff, which I took and plunged the sphere into it, which is why it began to glow with a dim green light. With a slight chill I felt the shadows of the dead next to me. It's quite a nasty feeling when something slimy and cold touches your skin. Unpleasant. The staff slightly increased its radiance, and the unpleasant sensations disappeared. I asked the shadows of the ancestors living in this city to walk the bridge between the edges, appearing in the dreams of the descendants, to guide them to the light. My voice rustled, which seemed otherworldly to me. I grant you the power this night to walk in the dreams of your children and descendants, to speak with them, to guide them. Show them your face, no longer sleeping. And give peace to their souls and minds, giving them the answer they so long awaited. The lines of the appeal to the shadows of the dead faded away and the staff slightly dimmed, but the spirits still heard me, lining up in a huge crowd of invisible shadows near the house of the one who had summoned me. And there were not just many of them, but countless. There were 2 shadows standing next to me, behind whose backs the less obvious shadows of their ancestors were visible. A man in a white cloak with tongues of flame along the hem, and a shinobi jonin uniform, and a girl with long hair. They looked at me with sadness, squeezing their hands, because shadows are not able to touch the living. Mom, Dad? I said dully. After all, I became an orphan too early in this life, and my memory could not awaken for a long time so that I could take care of myself. And from those feelings that had been accumulating in my heart for almost 7 years, tears of bitterness appeared in my eyes, and at the same time a feeling of relief appeared that at least I saw them. And their gaze, even from the shadows, showered me with warmth and care, concern and support. Thank you for giving me life and protecting me. The shadows nodded in response to my words, since they could not speak. I remembered my past reincarnation. And now I can take care of myself. The tears flowed silently and seemed so bitter, falling on my lips that they even burned. I remembered my parents from my past life, and it became even harder for me. But I held on and, raising a determined look, promised them, I will become so strong that I will break the back of anyone who encroaches on the people dear to me. The father smiled with barely noticeable lips and whispered, My son! My mother cried silently on her husband's shadowy shoulder, looking at me with pride and love, worrying and supporting me. I wiped away my tears and my eyes became cold as winter frost. Listen, shadows of the departed. And all the shadows that stood in my apartment, corridors, on the roof, floors and the adjacent territory and even far away turned to me. Find your descendants and talk. By my will I give you this opportunity. Help them, bring them to their senses. And remember. The last word was so menacing that a wave of unified urge to retreat passed through the shadows. If they continue to mock me, then I will be different, and you will meet them prematurely in the gray limit. The shadows nodded gratefully and dissolved. Only the shadows of my father and mother remained standing next to me. Thank you for coming. I smiled at them and, having closed the water, dried myself and dried the panties in which I had performed the summoning from higher necromancy with magic, returned the staff to the portal, and it closed. And the sphere in my hand disappeared. I'm going to sleep. We'll be able to talk soon. The shadows smiled and followed me into the room, looking at my home with displeasure. Mom looked around the apartment and showed with gestures that she was proud of me, because everything was tidy and clean. Dad stuck out his chest and showed with his whole appearance that he was proud of his son. It was still light outside, but I went to bed. Because I really wanted to talk to my local parents, whom I missed so much until I remembered my past self. But even so, I perceived them as parents, because I was born here precisely because of them. Naruto Uzumaki or Master Archibald fell asleep, casting a light sleep spell on himself and spending time with his parents, who gave him life in this world. He was happy as a child, which he physically was. After all, in his home world there were necromancers who protected the peace of the dead, and the master was unable to summon his parents there. And here he called not the souls of the parents, who could already go to reincarnation, but only their spirit, which often remains close to their beloved descendants. They had a very good time together. Mon showed off her knowledge in the basics of Fuinjutsu, which the surprised master identified as rune chains with a slightly different structure. They talked a lot about each other, and Naruto learned a lot of new and interesting things. But the rest of the day and night passed quickly, despite the fact that the dreams that night were not in a hurry and were stretched out, like time in reality. But there was still little time. However, even this was enough for him to wake up much happier. And other residents of Konoha, going to bed, saw incredible dreams where they met those whom they had lost long ago, loved, appreciated, were friends with. They talked a lot there, cried, hugged and patted themselves on the back. They told and explained a lot. They reprimanded. Sometimes they even scolded. Sarutobi Hiruzen met his wife Buwako in a dream, who was young and beautiful again exactly the way he fell in love with her. And just as tough, because as soon as he realized who was in front of him, she slapped him on the head. Of course, it was only a phantom of pain, but still a discouraging feeling. And then he learned a lot about himself, and when she spoke out for everything she thought about him, they were finally able to talk calmly about everything. Hiruzen woke up for the first time in many years, not a gloomy and swollen old man, but a smiling, youthful spirit, and with many plans to test. Hatake Kakashi met Rin in a dream and spoke to her. And then the teacher came and scolded him sullenly for not looking after his son. Hatake had never felt so ashamed. It later turned out that on that strange night, everyone who slept saw lost loved ones, comrades, and loved ones. Konoha woke up and found out that all the residents saw their dead loved ones and relatives that night. At first they were a little scared, and then people appointed a new holiday, which they decided to celebrate with gifts to the departed. This holiday was set for the 29th of March, the Day of Return, as this holiday was called. It was recorded even by the monks in Konoha as a miracle of fire, whose were called those who had gone beyond so that they could talk and lighten their burdens. Many were reprimanded by the departed, and they were ashamed. And some did not let go, only became even more angry. But thank goodness for all that is good, there were far fewer of them than those who let go of old pain and resentment. Konoha woke up a little different. With frequent wet pillows, sometimes a head buzzing from being scolded in a dream, or something else that we'll leave out of the picture. But undoubtedly, many woke up with great warmth in their hearts. Part 4. When I woke up, I looked at the ceiling for a long time, unable to tear my head away from the pillow. After all, in this dream, my parents from this world and I were chatting non-stop. They knew about my situation in life, because they were looking after me, trying to support me in the most difficult moments. Minato was discouraged when he saw in spirit how I was treated by those around me and even the village's leadership. But when he came to Hiruzen, he realized that he was being pressed by advisors, a bunch of problems that had fallen because of the Biju. Politics had gone downhill, since many thought that Konoha had weakened. As his father said, Hiruzen then slept, God willing, a couple of hours every 2 days. There was so much work. And only after he had sorted everything out, he was finally able to see other sides of what had happened and the decisions of the advisors, who simply took apart, screw by screw, all the neighborhoods and houses that had lost their owners and confiscated huge sums from the accounts of dead shinobi who had no heirs. But they didn't pocket it, then Hiruzen would have torn it apart like a dog a hot water bottle. No, all the money received went to good use, help in restoring the settlement, benefits, food and equipment for those in need. Give a bribe to whoever is needed in the government of the Land of Fire and neighboring countries, so that those people would interfere as much as possible with any decisions against Konoha. A huge sum went to Danzo, who used this money to hire Nuknin through 15 hands and arrange diversionary sabotage, redirecting the attention of other great villages and various jackhals from Konoha. In short, it was a terrible mess back then. Everyone was running off their feet, and it was impossible to keep track of everything. And only later did the huge corruption losses, thefts and embezzlements come to light. We managed to get something back and find the culprits, but these were crumbs from a pie that had already been cut up. Hiruzen, realizing that little Naruto had nothing left, tried to help the child somehow. After all, he had no clan or relatives left to look after his property. The child was robbed, which became the #1 blow for Hiruzen. But he still fought for the boy. He even wanted to petition for Naruto to be accepted into the Uchiha clan, but other clans and families rose up in arms, as did the advisors. After all, many saw the Sharingan in the eyes of the Kyuubi, and the Uchiha clan began to be very strongly oppressed on all fronts by those who finally found leverage over them. The great clan paid a very high price for their own gene and the power of their eyes that time. When he failed, he even left his post for a day, getting drunk with the Uchiha chief, Ikizoku. And then he squeezed out everything he could so that the boy would receive the best shelter, the best living conditions, at least some housing, and not on credit, which would remove at least part of the yoke from him, and he would be able to start saving for new housing faster than any other orphan. He tore it out with his teeth, forbade it, vetoed the sale of the last plots of land of the former Uzumaki clan, and in his desk for a couple of years now there has been a letter with papers for that land, which he will give to the boy as soon as he becomes a Chunin. And knowing his father and the power of the lost clan, he did not doubt for a minute that he would not have to wait long. But at some point, serious problems with the cloud began, which threatened to turn into an acute phase of the war. But Konoha, which had not yet recovered, could not allow this, and therefore Hiruzen plunged headlong into this problem, trying to level out the sharp edges as much as possible. He even had to swallow an almost successful assassination attempt on the daughter of the head of the Hyuga clan. The head of this clan had to hand over his twin brother to be executed. And even though they had a strange life, clan politics and all the other nonsense, the head of the Hyuga loved his brother. He just couldn't show it. That time, having found the head of the Hyuga dead drunk in the forest of death, he even deservedly endured a blow to his eye, and not only that. And then they drank together and the Kage, gloomy and tired, told Hayashi why he had to take this unpleasant step from all sides, which undermined the already shaken faith in the Hokage. Then they parted ways. Hayashi later caused quite a bit of trouble for the Hokage, but without much spark. Hearing this from the lips of the spirit of the father, I sat with my jaw hanging open for about 5 minutes until he brought me to my senses by patting me hard on the shoulder. As it turns out, Hiruzen really isn't such a bastard. And when the information appeared that I was a Jinchuriki, all the advisors, Hiruzen and Danzo with a black eye, were shocked. After all, the biggest secret of the village became known to every resident of Konoha. Kage was tearing and throwing, shaking everything and finding traces of the activity of some brilliant and elusive saboteur. The only one who saw him alive was found already very stale in his own apartment, with a kunai in his heart, and without a head. Hiruzen has actually done a lot for me, and I will repay him for his kindness when I have the opportunity. The Uchiha clan has received the biggest reputation hit, and has been heavily oppressed lately. Minato noticed that a rat, when pushed to the wall, would defend himself to the last. And here was a whole clan of shinobi. And Danzo's policy towards this clan was clearly excessive and cruel. As they say, there's always a black sheep in the family. And among the Hyugas there are those terrible ones and even Nukanins. What can we say about other clans and families, in which the hierarchy is not so strict? Once upon a time I helped the Uchiha clan out of the kindness of my heart, and they were so grateful to me that they elevated me to the rank of some kind of deity. And knowing their desire to accept me and raise me as their clansman, it was captivating. So it turns out that I have a debt to them too. The parallel reality doesn't count. In this one there is a direct desire, and even their opposition, for the sake of my upbringing and acceptance into their clan as a protege. After all, it didn't matter that I was a Jinchuriki or anything like that. They sincerely wanted to help. Oh, it seems like my debts are growing, and I'm only 7. Where from? Let's not pay attention to the age of the mind and soul, I'm confused there myself. In short, my parents filled my head with useful information and weighed my shoulders down with at least a couple of positive debts. And several negative. I have a negative debt to my student Minato, who my father would spit venom at when he remembered him and call him a weakling, unworthy of a shinobi protector and the title of Jounin. That bastard didn't even lift a finger to help his teacher's son. At least in some way. After all, Hataki is a loner, an elite Jounin, earning an immeasurable amount of ryo, and he couldn't help his teacher's orphan son in any way? It's not even funny, and the loss of his team doesn't give him a discount on this. Although Minato himself, personally, asked me to look after him if they didn't return from the battle. I'll have to check everything and then act. Over my long experience, I'm becoming increasingly convinced that only a stupid youth who can't think through a situation more than a couple of steps ahead acts rashly. Also, my father and mother were seething with anger towards Jiraiya. Who is my godfather? Hearing this, I silently cracked my knuckles. At the very least, I'll punch him in the face, and then I'll listen to what he'll say in his defense. At the same time, I'll gut his mental field. Because something doesn't add up. So many close people died on the day of the Kyuubi attack? The entire Uzumaki clan? All of his friends and family suddenly, at once, turned away from the son of his beloved teacher and student? Oh no, it seems to me that someone's ears are sticking out here, which I'll tear out by the roots. Part 5. I woke up from my memories and thoughts about the information I had received when there was a knock on the door. Jumping out of bed, he ran across the floor, wincing from its cold. And anyway, it was a bit chilly this morning. Opening the doors, I saw 4 ANBU who were loaded with boxes of things so much that they would hardly have seen anything in front of them if they hadn't been carrying the boxes on their backs. I walked away and the shinobi quickly brought everything to my house, ran everywhere they could, but quickly, and at the same time said that this was the Hokage's order, to look at what and how in my house and send a report. In this case, the report must be from all 4. They must not talk to each other until the moment of submitting the report, either verbally, nor with gestures, nor in any other possible way. For more ANBU monitor this. To be honest, I didn't understand such overcaution. Perhaps the Hokage was pissed off to give such an order. Literally in a minute they had examined everything. They even opened the refrigerator, but saw only the missing milk and a couple of forlornly standing packs of noodles inside. And the smell of the missing milk did not allow them to concentrate on the overall picture, forcing them to quickly close the door. When they silently left, closing the doors behind them, I began to thoughtfully examine the 12 boxes standing in the middle of my already small room, which suddenly became even smaller because of the pile of these new containers. My belly button almost came undone when I tried to drag the top box to the floor. It turned out to be so heavy. And the stack on which it stood swung so threateningly that I thought, well, why do I need it, and went to the bathroom to get a footrest. I quickly dragged it, and found myself above the top of the box, sealed with opaque tape. Looking at it, it dawned on me that I hadn't taken anything to open it, but I was too lazy to go down and run to the kitchen for something like that blunt, hideously blunt bread knife. Having forced the nail on my right index finger to grow and become sharp, I used it to cut the tape and finally opened the box, inside which I saw with surprise 10 packages of soap, shampoo, washing powder and other household chemicals, including a product for cleaning scale and rust. There were also kitchen towels, garbage bags and the like. Now it is clear why I couldn't lift it. There was so much stuff in it that it would drive me crazy. To make it liftable, I had to run to the toilet and back with a set of things that fit in my hands. When I was able to lift the box, I dragged it to the bathroom and sorted everything into the boxes that I had, but there was very little stored in them. And what I brought barely fit. And then, some of the things had to be put wherever they could in the bathroom, but so that they wouldn't get damaged. The second box was also too heavy to lift, and when I opened it, I almost dropped my jaw to the floor, as it was filled with various food products. Cereals, seasonings, long-life sauces, canned goods, and the like. Now I had to run to the kitchen with part of the box's contents until it became light enough to drag it too. The third box was also full of food. Various canned goods, dried vegetables, frozen meat, fish, liver. I ran to the kitchen again, then took a break there, brewed myself some tea, and returned to the boxes again. In short, I found a lot of kitchenware in them, cheap but high quality. Basic underwear in my size and for growth. Bed linen and accessories. Notebooks, pens, pencils, sharpeners, erasers, scrolls. And in the last one I saw something that made my jaw drop and almost break the floor. I was already shocked, but to see a whole box of ammunition for a student of the Shinobi Academy? Even if it was cheap, even if it was orphaned, but given out for free. Children's shinobi sandals that fit my feet and are 2 sizes too big, blue and black shinobi pants, 2 pairs each. Specialized t-shirts, white, black, blue. Also 2 pairs each. Shorts, 3 pairs, elastic bandages in a pack of 6 rolls of 20 meters each, 3 pieces. Pouches for shurikens, kunai, and other necessities for shinobi. A survival kit in the form of a bag with small things like threads, needles, flint and medicine with bandages. Yes, Kami, what wasn't there? There were even special boxes with shurikens and kunai at the bottom. Although they were training ones, and therefore not of high quality, this was more than enough for training children, and for me, it was manna from heaven. Do you even have any idea how much all this costs? It seems that someone from the Hokage's office will be spending the night in the good interrogator's room with a torture kit tonight. There. I did it. I showed that everything was bad, and it became much better. After all, now I have a lot of food, clothes for training and tools for them. You know, it took a lot of time to drag everything I had brought, so I ate after lunch. Much after. I cooked some boiled rice, some gravy with liver, and enjoyed life with some aromatic tea. The training is only in 2 days. We will have to adjust the training plans, since Hiruzen turned out to be quite a person, and not some kind of creature. The old man is just swamped with work, and his health is not what it used to be. The rest of the evening was spent cleaning the house, taking out the trash, preparing and adjusting the training uniform, and looking through the self-study brochures that were also in that box with ammunition. Not much was said there, but I still managed to extract some information. Although I myself remember a lot from my last visit to the same world, everything can be different here, and therefore it is worth being on guard. For example, a strange shadow player who made my life here not so happy. "Who are you?" I said, lying under the blanket and looking at the dark ceiling of my room. "Well, never mind, you will show up anyway when the changes happen and this is reported to you. And then you better bury yourself somewhere deep, since I myself will feed you to the demons. Even though I do not like this branch of magical art." The next day didn't bring anyone to the doorstep in the morning, which was a little comforting. I had food and everything else, and after doing all the procedures early in the morning, cooking and having breakfast, I thought about what to do with myself. Since there was no lab at hand, I decided to do something with myself. I sat on the bed in a meditative pose and began to work on my body. Namely, synchronizing the thin shells of the new body and those that joined them when my memory unpacked and the seed itself sprouted. They synchronized quickly, since this body was given to me by reincarnation, which means their structure grows from the soul, which is one and the same. Having fed them a large amount of spiritual spectrum energy, not to be confused with necrotic, and the shells immediately stood up as they should, and I felt relief, as if I had thrown off a considerable weight from my shoulders. Then I looked at the muscle and other structures of the body, and of course, everything was sad there. I had to start stimulating and increasing metabolism, directing the necessary substances to underdeveloped organs and making sure that they normalized and began to work as they should. The main thing here is attentiveness, so as not to overdo it, otherwise there will be problems in the future, like the fact that your right leg will be a size smaller than the left. Well, screw such turns. It's good that the chakra leveled out many of the injuries. The recovery did not take much time. Having woken up after this, I realized that before such work on the body it was necessary to eat much more densely and throw in the necessary substances. And so, under the growl of a hungry stomach, I found myself in the kitchen and began throwing food into myself, and it really did fit quite a lot, since the Uzumaki gene was running at full power, which consumes a lot of calories, but at the same time gives a lot, and therefore putting up with the large amount of food consumed is not a problem. If you are not an orphan. Looks like it's time to cook again. It took some time, but soon I had the same rice in front of me, since it is very nutritious, and stewed meat with sauce. After having an additional small portion of freshly prepared food, I went to leaf through the brochures again, and when I read them all from cover to cover, I realized that they mostly contained information about what was needed for training, how to train properly, and all the same focus. I was free from work, and therefore did what was said in the brochure body training, while magically stimulating the muscles and helping the metabolism in the body to quickly remove unnecessary and deliver necessary. With this approach to training, the effect is achieved much faster than in a natural way. Although there is a chakra in this world, and it helps to develop even with a lack of normal nutrition, it is unlikely to help in everything and there will be deviations, although they will not immediately appear. Squats, push-ups, running in place, abs. With the help of magic and his knowledge, he sometimes bent so much that any yoga specialist would envy him, but he trained even those muscles that people usually don't train because they don't know how to do it. At lunchtime I decided to go out for a walk and see how people treat me after that interesting night. I gave myself time to digest the information I received. And although I know that not everyone will let go of their pain and hatred, I was prepared for some problems. Still, I don't want to leave life so quickly again. And take a closer look. And finally visit that ramen restaurant where I have a whole stack of food coupons.